Hey, hello everyone, Sergey from Ushanka Show again in another episode of the Ushanka Stories, Ushanka Vlog. We're going to talk again about Soviet housing. And if you're new to my channel, or maybe you somehow missed it, I have a separate playlist, Soviet housing, link will be below in the comment section. So, story of my family, a lot of my stories was just based on my recollection. As a kid, I really had a good memory, so I soaked up all the conversations my parents had. But now, since my mom moved back to Kyiv and we can talk, like FaceTime each other, she started filling gaps that some adding information about our family housing story that I didn't know before. So she told me something really, I don't know how to say weird, but something I totally didn't know. So that relates to our final stage, why we ended up buying an apartment in a country where free housing was available. It wasn't really free, but was extremely affordable rental. So like a subsidized housing, if you say it in, for the Western world. My family ended up spending a lot of money buying so-called cooperative apartment. And once again, I have a video on this topic called Soviet Mortgage. Link will be below. So a quick review, just in case if somebody forgot or you're new to my channel. My parents both met in Kyiv, so they came from out of country, out of villages. They married in 1970, and my father lived in the dorms that belonged to the Kyiv Antonov aircraft factory, and my mom lived in the other dorms. And I'm not sure for how long after they got married, they actually still lived separately because there was, guess what? There was a waiting list, очередь, to get into the family dorms. So they, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, married couple, but they were like dating pretty much. My dad will come and hang out with my mom at her dorms. And dorms, it's a room, smaller room with 4 beds, so 4 girls. So anyway, so when they finally managed to get into the family dorms, there was a small room, can't tell you how small, maybe 10 by 12, something like that, in feet. Had 2 beds, so it's for 2 families. So my family, we shared a small room with another family for 5 years, and not another, it was families were changing. So in 5 years, there were 3 different families moving in, moving out, while my parents were staying in their dorms while they tried to get an apartment for themselves, right? So this is when so they got married in 1970. I was born in the summer of 1971. And for 5 years till 1976, we just couldn't get a housing option, couldn't get an apartment. My father's aircraft factory had a 20-year waiting list. So in order to get an apartment, you have to wait 20 years. Meanwhile, you have to find housing on your own. So my mom managed finally to get a Gostinka apartment. I just made a video recently about it. So it's a hotel-style apartment. So it's kind of like studio. So one small room, little like 10 by 10, tiny kitchen, tiny bathroom, but it was a separate apartment. So in 1976, we moved there. Now, after we got that apartment, my mom changed jobs. So she got apartment from one job and now she could change job. And she said one of the reasons was she worked pretty much like downtown Kyiv, and I was going to kindergarten near our apartment, and it took my mom 1 hour to get to work and 1 hour back using public transportation. Once again, my family never owned a car. So she was picking me up. Like my dad had night shifts, day shifts, so he couldn't always pick me up. So that was my mom's responsibility. So she said kindergarten was open until 6 p.m. So she could barely make it before closing, and quite often she will find me by myself with a lady that stayed in the kindergarten overnight to watch over the building. So when you're a kid and you're the last kid to be picked up, so quite often she saw my tears, she felt really bad. So she started looking for a place to work nearby. And of course, in Soviet Union, since pay was pretty much similar everywhere, it's more about what kind of benefits you can get on the top, of better locations, so it's closer to where you live. So she started working at a place called DSK 3, so it's a Дома строительный комбинат, so it's a apartment building combinat, so factory. So they were designing homes, apartment buildings, and then they were building parts of it. If you saw Soviet Union construction, those projects, they were building like panels with the windows, and then by crane set them up like a Lego blocks. So she got the job there. So they had a waiting list there too for an apartment. So she got herself on the waiting list there. So by 1980, so we moved in 1976 into this little apartment. And now we're on a new waiting list for like bigger apartment because we qualified. There's another part I need to cover. There were limits how many square meters were assigned to a person. I believe in different cities with different situation. In Leningrad, modern day St. Petersburg, it was 5 square meters per person. And so you can, I forgot, sorry, I apologize to Ron, how many square feet, not many. So 5 square feet per square meters per person. So if you live in a room, even if you like have a communal apartment where you just live in one room and you share kitchen and bathrooms with 4 other families, if you have 3 people living in a 20 square meters apartment room, you're not qualified for separate apartment because you have more than 5 square meters per person. In our case, it was like 10 square meter apartment and 3 of us, so we qualified to get actually 2-room apartment. But once again, my dad factory was no way to wait 20 years. My mom was in a construction company, so they had shorter list. In 1980, she said number 16, and it meant that she will get apartment in 8 years. So that place that actually built apartment buildings, they were getting 2 apartments per year for their own workers. Or maybe like it was by departments. But anyway, in 1980, we were looking at the option to get a 2-room apartment, bigger apartment, in 8 years. So by 1988, cutting really close to the end of the Soviet Union where all those waiting lists disappeared. But then this is what my mom told me, why they decided to, instead of waiting 8 years for a free apartment, which is, once again, as I said, we had to pay rent, so subsidized apartment. Then we went for so-called cooperative apartment, and that one was 20,000 rubles. I thought 15,000. She said, no, it was 20,000 rubles. So my family together, combined income a year was, so 300 times, so $3,600 rubles a year, and they purchased 20,000 ruble apartment, 3-room apartment. So you're looking like pretty much this is your prices, normal prices for housing like in the West. You have close to 8 years of your combined family income. This is how much and that's the apartment, not a house. It's just an apartment. So I believe my parents would stay and wait for 8 years. But once again, in 1981, I was 10. So it means that I would be about 17 when we finally could get slightly bigger apartments. So picture sharing a small room, 10 by 12 room with your parents and your adult, teenager. Not really fun. But I believe my parents probably would wait. That's what most people did. But then, this is what Mom told me. This was kind of shocking information. She said there were started rumors circulating, at least at her place of work, that in a couple of years, the government gonna cancel all this waiting list. They'll just disappear. There'll be no more free apartments. And so it was nothing official, but somehow there started this rumor circulating. My mom panicked because that meant that we're gonna get stuck in this tiny apartment pretty much forever. You couldn't buy apartments in Soviet Union like normally. And then someone told her like, hey. There's going to be a cooperative apartment building started going up in 1980. It'll be done in 1981. And we have options for people who want to jump on a deal. They have some apartments available, but it's 20,000 rubles, which is, my parents, at that time, my parents' savings were 800 rubles. And they needed 4,500 rubles down payment. It sounds like a normal mortgage, right? 4,500 rubles down payment, and then for next 15 years you have payments to pay it off. Huge amount of money, and I covered that whole story in my video about Soviet mortgages. And once again, link below in the comment section if you missed it before. But this is the reason my mother basically started pushing towards this. It's kind of almost like a financial suicide. Family with 300 rubles a month income, jump, and 800 rubles savings, jumping on 20,000 ruble apartment with $4,500 down payment, is because they were just like, if I believe, should we believe these rumors or not? But my mom decided not to take chances, and she had to borrow money from her father, from friends. It was a mess, but they managed to pull it off, and that was the biggest achievement of my family. Both are full-time workers, both are labor union members, and the best thing they could do in their 20 years in the Soviet Union together is to get a 3-room apartment. No cars, no fancy vacations, basically nothing to write home about except just getting this. And it's a pretty basic apartment, but anyway, so this is why on these weird rumors about, and I tried to Google, there's nothing showed up in the research that something was canceled or not. Maybe just their factory was losing the right to get an apartment. I'm not sure what was going on, but this is what spooked my mom and drove us, our family, to get into the copyright apartment. And of course, then we were in quite a bit of financial strain, I think is the word, because first of all, you get mortgage payment. And my mom said, there was something, I don't remember, like 44 rubles a month, maybe more. She had her money deducted from her salary, so she was making 130 rubles a month, and 44 was gone just for the mortgage payment. Then, of course, you had electric bill. There's a couple other things, which not big, but still. And then we had to pay back people that loaned us money. I believe my grandpa gave my mom 3,000 rubles. And that one was, we never paid back. It was agreement that we will take my grandparents when they get too old to live on their own out in the village. They will stay with us. So that was kind of like this agreement. So lucky there, but I still had to pay back 1,500 rubles to my dad's friend that loaned. Otherwise, we won't get that apartment. It's a crazy story. Because my dad's relatives, and we had a lot of relatives on his side. He has 8 siblings. We weren't able to borrow a single ruble. That whole family refused to help us. But when we got an apartment, suddenly they wanted my cousins to move in and stay with us while they go to college in Kyiv. I have a video on that topic too, why our relatives hated us so much, because my mom basically told them to F off. You didn't help us to get this apartment, no one stays here from your side. But yeah, so this is like biggest achievement. But then, of course, for all this time, it was quite a financial strain. Normal situation. You have a big house payment, apartment payment, plus you have debts. You pay it off. But so yeah, that was interesting. I said, of course, I was a kid. I didn't know any better. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of nice things, and everything we had to buy, we had to purchase on payments. TV, couches, a vacuum cleaner. Mom said, like, once we pay off one item, then we'll get something else on payments again. So this is kind of interesting situation. So most people in Soviet Union didn't have to worry about cost of housing, but still people were quite poor. And that's my definition of socialism. Socialism makes people poor, but you're comfortably poor because you're not afraid to lose your housing because it's so cheap in most cases, except it's cooperative apartment. So, but anyway, so that was, I thought, kind of interesting detail about these rumors in Kyiv that waiting lists for apartments will be canceled and people will live, will be with whatever they have currently. And that Gostinka apartment complex that I told you about recently, there's a lot of families that's still there that were there in the 80s and they were never able to move out, get something bigger. Of course, people who figure out how to make money managed to buy apartments and move out, but there's still people who moved in 19 76 when this apartment was built, raised, and they're still there until now. Those little tiny hotel-style apartments were built like for temporarily, like at least you can get something, and then you can get better later. So anyway, well, I hope you guys enjoy this story. Thank you for watching Ushanka Show. As always, please don't forget to like it. Maybe YouTube will notice this video and helps it to go up in recommendations. And I appreciate everyone's support who supports me through memberships and Patreon. Thank you so much. До побачення. Goodbye.